senior is when they started losing population. So a lot of those schools that were 11-man started dropping back to 8-man.
Yeah.
And they had, you look on our sideline, we got 15 guys. You look over there, they got 40. And you're like, oh shit. But a lot of good players came from 8-man teams too.
I bet really conditioned players.
Yeah.
Usually
Play the whole game.
Yeah.
And you play both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
Usually increments of 8. 8 or 6.
What was the name of your school?
Capitol,
Okay.
I like Stockton,
Yeah.
Hill City.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
They can have, I have it on my
Oh,
email
thanks.
right now, Julie, so if somebody else needs one. All right. You got it now?
Benefit district. Never think of that term.
That one may take longer.
Yeah.
All right, 7 o'clock. We will get started. Brian, you want to kick it off since you had this in committee?
Do you have anything you wanted to announce or talk about before?
Yeah, so before we get into all this, regarding the community center, we are in the process of setting up one more work session with the rec. So just know that before we go into this, that we are in the process of setting that up. What's your guys' Saturdays look like though, from the next 2 or 3?
I have, Nate has basketball, but I don't need to go to it. We can get.
What times do you guys work?
I just know I'm busy 2 Sundays from
This
now.
Saturday, it's at 4:30. I don't know. I'll have to look at the
Right.
schedule.
Right?
Raffle and counter install on Saturday, we're not gonna get on for that.
Saturday the 6th is my son's birthday.
Well, we don't want to do that, Dave.
We're
Yeah,
celebrating on the
6th I'm
7th.
out.
Okay. So the 13th looks good.
13th, I'm gone. That's my birthday.
Oh.
Sorry, guys.
You wanna spend it with us? You wanna spend it with us?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
This is something.
I mean, I'd like to do it at least before. You said the 6th is out.
And I didn't say, we're for Susan maybe, you
I'm
said, right?
working, I'm
Okay.
a vendor that day.
Does it have to be a Saturday? Can we fit it in the week?
We can if we can get the rec board.
Okay. Just like another 7 o'clock in here maybe, or?
Do we? Yeah, we could probably distance out, put more tables down and do it in here. It's only 5 more people than what's here right
Mhm.
now.
Yeah, it's
so,
just the,
Okay, so are you guys open then? What about next Tuesday, a week from today? Since we know we have this room on Tuesdays.
Is that
it's
Yeah.
a council
City
meeting.
council meeting.
See you.
But the 9th
I was
is,
like,
Never mind.
Let's do it.
The 9th.
what about the 9th? Yeah,
Yeah.
the 9th would work.
Okay. We'll do the 9th, plan on the 9th. Glenn, do you send
You get on the night.
an email to,
Barring them not being able to attend.
At 7 o'clock.
yeah. And I'll actually just go ahead and text Matt right now and see if he can.
See if they're open.
Maybe he's watching, maybe just waving.
Yeah,
Ask him.
I doubt it. He's probably home
Oh.
relaxing. Okay, he's been texting, so.
So with that, Casey and I talked about, since that topic is open business in a discussion item as part of a council meeting, I think it's okay that we still talk about it here in an open meeting where it's been announced that the strategic plan could be about all the things. But Casey and I talked about maybe looking at it from a planning perspective. So not getting so far into some of the details that we do in council, but thinking about it as we prioritize. Having this knowledge that we're going to get back together with the rec commission, that was something that was important to me to develop that relationship. So we're hoping tonight that we don't get too into the weeds on any particular one project and just look at it from process and planning, which is probably where we're having the most struggle right now in my mind. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. We've talked about this in legislative committee, what you see before you with the agenda. And we kind of pieced together part of what we did in the last meeting, which we all agreed at the end that we were going to try to prioritize these items that we came up with at the end. And then what we're going to do, if we have time, is bring in economic development towards the end. So what you'll see in the next meeting, we'll start off with economic development, and we'll take that further. So we'll have it in our heads as far as what we want, the direction we're going to go. And then we'll start to bring in infrastructure, which then we'll finish out after that.
Okay.
And then hopefully piece all this together, and we'll approve it if we like it,
Sure.
and publish it, and share it. So the first thing I have down on the agenda is, remember back to that Saturday, and it took us not that long to come up with this vision statement. And I hope you've had a chance to look at it again. But Baldwin City, the safe, affordable, vibrant, interactive community with opportunities for all. Is this something that we as a council still feel, and the mayor, is what we want our vision to be as we move forward? That's my question for you guys and myself right now. Is there anything that we see that we want to add or change to the vision statement?
I'll start off. I think it sounds good still. I mean,
Okay.
from my perspective, I think it's still a good vision statement. I don't think anything's changed for me in the last year to make a change to that. That's just mine.
Yeah, it hasn't been that long since we came up with it. The only one I could see subbing out maybe is the affordable part, where opportunities for all sort of being that opportunistic. Maybe affordable can fall into that if you wanted to stick another word in there, but I like it still the same as is.
And what we could do is, Scott and I talked about revisiting this vision statement the next few sessions,
Sure.
so that it's kind of evolving as we go. It may stay the same all the way through. And as you look at other cities, I read an article about Lawrence, their strategic plan, their vision statement was really close to ours. And I think if you look these up in other municipalities, you'll see the same words appear. But if there are things that we want to change about it, we certainly can. For me, it's where I'm still at. I think when we speak to these values, safe, affordable, vibrant, interactive, opportunities for all, I think when we go through these prioritization of these projects, to think about these values and how they fit in. And I know we've been doing that. If we talk about like the community center when we had our discussion, we're talking about a place where everyone can come use. So there's opportunities for all. Affordable, that might be something that we could argue back and forth depending on how you feel. So some of this isn't just locked in as far as how it works for each council member. But we can keep talking about it as we go. So if we are comfortable with this, then we will move on to the next thing. Okay? And we'll just start off the next few sessions with this vision statement. I'm sure it'll probably be the same, stay the same. The next thing is what I had the most trouble with. We talked about this in legislative committee, is prioritizing the things that we had come up with at the end of the last meeting. And I'll just start off. For me, when I was thinking about it, each thing has sort of a different need and a different reason why it's on our list. So if we're talking about urgency, if we're talking about things we think the community should get or need. But for me, I started to prioritize the services that we already have, what's in front of us. So things like the library, we already support the library. We've had that meeting with the library board. We're already moving towards that goal of helping understanding what their needs are. And if we do make the decision to increase funding for them, we haven't made that decision yet. But that's a service that municipalities do for the most part, in most places. We also have the pool, which for me is probably a future project to focus on, but there's no reason to say that in this strategic plan in the next 5 years we can't just start studying this problem and understanding it. I know in Julie, in our Public Works meeting, every month the pool comes up in the dead of winter. And then City Lake, and I put that towards the top, not because really, I put it towards the top because it's something I don't want to deal with. I'm scared to deal with. I don't know the answers, and I'm not sure a good direction to deal with it. But it's something we have. It's green space, which if you look at these, a lot of these fit into green space, which is sort of its own category within quality of life. But I feel it's an urgent issue. And once again, it ties to another issue in infrastructure with that water line that we have going out there. They're not dependent on each other, but in my mind, they fit together. If you commit to one, you might commit to the other. You might be more likely to. But for me, those are really the top three. Community center is up there, and I put my dot up there on that Saturday. But to me, it's not something we have yet already in our what we do. It's something I want to focus on at the same time. So when I say those are my top three, it doesn't mean that I think that's the order that we should focus on. I think we can still do our work on the community center alongside some of these other top priorities. I'll just keep going through the rest of them on mine, and we can just go around the room. Golf course and dog park and parks and green space and the trail. I think, well, let me start with sidewalks. I think on February 2nd we have the MPO coming. Or was that last year that they came?
I think that was last year. We haven't had a request from
So we have the safe
They will
routes.
I think they're actually scheduled for the next council meeting.
Okay.
I think they're requesting me on the agenda, so we can talk about that.
So at the next council meeting on February 2nd, the MPO will present our Safe Routes to School plan, which really ties into back when Susan was on Sidewalks and Trails, that plan that we had for our sidewalk projects. And in that plan, they'll ask our council to adopt it. They have some goals already set out for sidewalks built in, and we'll see those at that meeting. One of those is for 100% of our, and I forget how they word this, but basically our safe routes to school to be completed by 2025. So in a strategic plan with sidewalks as one of our focus areas, that's something when we adopt their plan, we can write into our strategic plan. We are, I think, 87% there, which to compare to Lawrence and Eudora, we are much further along than they are. I believe Eudora is at 60%, somewhere around there, and Lawrence is not at our number either. So I believe by 2025 we can complete that goal. That's something we started working on 3 years ago, and some of the work had been done before that. So when when Glenn brings things before us and says, do you want to work on another TA grant? I think if we build this into our strategic plan, they're always going to bring it forward and say, do you want to do this? Continue, but it gives staff the direction that we're still committed to finishing this out. I think we will. One of the other goals was to increase students walking to school by 15%, and I don't remember the years that they had on that. But right there, we're adopting those two goals that could be written into that category. And really on a lot of these, we do have data. So on the pool, Matt provides data on usage. Through Public Works, we have data on its wear and tear. So we have a way to sort of study that. Same with some of the other things. I know with the trail, Glenn and Casey and Ed, they have done work on communicating with the state since COVID's come around, just like everything that's been harder to do. But they have made progress on that. The other thing with the trail for me is there's awareness out there. The groups that are into trails know that this is something that could happen and they're expecting to see. So I put some of those like trail, dog park, and those things towards the bottom of my priority list because I feel like we're making progress in ways. If it's something that we need to ramp up, we can, but there's mechanisms in place to keep going. So my top three were library, the pool, and the city lake, not in that order, but just top three things I feel are most urgent to at least focus on. Not to say we can't do community center at the same time. So if we just want to go around and however you want to do that, I was trying to think of a ranking system, but they all just are so different in what they need. And I don't see any reason why we can't work on all of them simultaneously.
So I guess what would be, I mean, is it necessary to prioritize?
I don't know that it is. Just like I said, some of them have needs because they're just, the lake has got its physical needs. It's falling apart. I don't know.
I just think it's almost hard to prioritize them in a way.
Yeah. Well, maybe we could go around and discuss where we.
I guess I viewed this as an exercise of goals and priorities because that's what drives your budget. Okay, I mean, if you don't prioritize, I'm not sure how then you figure out as you go forward with your budget which things you're going to do and which ones you're not. So to me, when I went through this exercise, it was from a budget perspective of if we have enough money to do it all, great. If we don't, I think you do need to have a prioritization, and it may change, but that's how I went through the exercise. And if we are going to fund the library, that's a prioritization, it needs to be in the budget. We need to have it figured out. Is it number one? So it's protected if we don't have any money beyond that. So that's, I guess, my take on why I think we should try to prioritize it. Not to say it won't change, but you got to start somewhere.
Well, then I feel my three top ones are related that way to the budget because that's how I was viewing those.
Okay.
As things that we already have built in that we need to fund on some level,
Right.
even if it's not increasing funding. But
Right, it's part of the budget, and something below that you don't feel should replace it,
right.
and that be not funded. So that, I think, just makes a budget discussion a little easier when we get to that point. And I'll just go down through mine based on that. I mean, community center is clear. It's a priority. It's going to require some funding somehow. And then it had sidewalks. We are in that program, but we still may need to do some funding. And then library, pool, and again, pool may be one that if there are no funding required, it's an easy conversation. Then the next one down gets funded that year. And then I did kind of lump in green space and parks, golf course, city lake, dog park into just that whole green space piece that would be the lowest priority on funding out of the budget to do something of the ones I mentioned. And then my opinion is the trail is more an economic development activity. It fits in both, but I would prefer to look at it from an economic development perspective, especially if we were looking at funding and we have a specific amount that we want to use for that. It ought to stand on its own and be part of that, as opposed to maybe taking some funding we have targeted for quality of life amenities. So that's my list, and I can send it to you.
Okay.
Julie, I'm passing the baton.
My three were the same as Ryan's. The library, I think, is really important, and I think if we can do it, we should try to help them out. They're doing a lot of programming and a lot of extra things that the library hasn't done before, or not as much of. And the pool and the city lake are two things that we have that need to be fixed. We hear those every month with Public Works because they don't know what to do, and they're needing our input on what we want to do, and to see if it's feasible or not.
timeline, because they're all in differing stages and are each gonna require different amounts of budget. Some a lot, some not so much, and, like community center, I would definitely say is my priority because it's something our city doesn't have. We've definitely identified it through all surveys. It's something that the community desperately wants. And because we have the potential to fund it through sales tax, it wouldn't necessarily impact our budget. So I would consider that a priority. Sidewalks, we're making great progress. I'd love to see us get to 100%, and so I guess I would, we're so close. It's almost at this point a low-hanging fruit. So I guess I would put that as my number 2. As far as number 3, I'm going to say it's probably a tie between the city lake and the pool, because those are 2 problems that we know are there and we haven't addressed them, and we really need to. We need to take a long, hard look at both of those to determine what direction we're going to go and what kind of financial impact it's going to have.
Okay, well, for the same reason Susan just listed, I have the community center at the top of mine, as that's the one that definitely seems to be toward the top for a lot of people in the community. Kind of the urgency, I have City Lake at number 2. I don't know how long you let it sit there and get. I mean, eventually pond succession takes over and it's a swamp. I don't know. The spillway is completely knocked over. It needs the concrete. It needs dredged. I don't know. Urgency's tough there, because what's the worst that can happen? In 10 years, if you still need to dredge it and build a dam, you just build a dredge and a dam, and it doesn't change anything. But at the same time, you also look at opportunities to be used. And so is that 5-10 years down the road that we don't have people actively using that green space out there? So that's number 2. I think that's pretty urgent. Library number 3. I think Wendy and her board did a real good job kind of articulating, a lot about their program and what their needs are. And we've been having some discussions about that recently. So sort of the same urgency there. Pool kind of goes along with that, as far as I'm still thinking in terms of urgency here. And then sidewalks, we've made some pretty good strides on, no pun intended. And I think we got a ways to go there, but I think that's something that's had a lot of attention lately. So, and I think we have a clear path there. So it's down toward not saying it's not important, but we have movement on it. And then the green space and trails are at the bottom there. I think those are ones that we don't feel maybe as urgent.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay. I don't know if you call it community center completion or closure, one of the 2. But either way, that's, obviously that's in the forefront right now. Sidewalks, they're ongoing I know, the council doesn't hear about it a lot. We do on our side, so just all the grants and stuff that we still have and all the projects, it's a top priority. And one thing that when I ran, I talked to a lot to the citizens about. I did put pool at number 3 because I do think, and not that I believe that we need to make a financial investment in it, I just think that it needs to be a top discussion item. There needs to be a long-term plan completed, or how are we going to fund it, how are we going to start setting money aside from that. I did put library 4, and then I put community discussion, because I think there needs we still have a lot of discussion on between how do you fund that, do you go the bigger picture type of thing, or keep it city. So City Lake I did put number 5, again, not because of financial investment, more that we need to discuss a plan for it, and what we feel is financially feasible or feasible for our community as a whole on that. Trail, I left that off mine because I agree with Scott. I think when we were talking about the trail, it was more economic development when we were talking about purchasing that trail. So for me, that belongs in economic development as well. 6, I put parks and green space. And then again, 7, golf course, in my opinion, we have a lease and it's good. We're good there, so I did not see that as a priority.
So it looks to me, just writing all this down, that the theme really is what's at the bottom more than what's at the top right now. So most of us had green space / parks, trail, if you want to mash all those together. I know some of us have trail as economic development, but those types of things seem to finish at the bottom for most people. The theme that I'm seeing is community centers at the top. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 people out of 6 had that at the top. City Lake, pool, sidewalks, and library seem to be the biggest themes that I'm seeing, just based on what we said here. I think as far as the strategic plan goes, I don't think there's any reason we can't set goals for each of those things. Even if, like with the community center, we just don't know yet, we might be able to plug that in as we move forward through our regular meetings. But that's what I'm noticing, just based on what everyone has said. Is there anything that I left out? The way I had it in my mind is there's where we're at right now with each of those things. We could take tonight and go through that and talk about that and which direction we'd like to see go. But once again, I'll start with the community center. I find it hard to deal with that one here in a work session. We can, if that's what you guys would like to do. But the mayor just announced that we're going to have a work session with the Recreation Commission. So I'm not sure what direction you guys would like to go as far as discussing that, a plan for it. To me, that's the plan moving forward tonight. I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, in my mind, the fact that a community center is the top of my list, I don't think necessarily means that it's the proposed community center.
Okay.
And I think that's the ongoing discussion, that we can have that tonight or not, but I do think community center is important. I'd like to see the city do something on it, but that's ongoing conversation. And I think it is at the top of the list because we've been spending a lot of time on it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that tonight we could accomplish anything, but I'm willing to discuss it.
I'll take a stab at it. I think if we can peel away a lot of the skin here, a lot of the onion layers, and get to the root of it, I think the real question is, how do you feel about property tax funding a community center? It's because this whole effort has been to avoid that, and so I think maybe that might be beneficial to discuss in our strategic planning session. So if the community center is at the top of our list, how open are we to property tax funding it? Because it's kind of been the elephant in the room. Because when you talk about something not the Bauer building, you are talking about property tax, and if there's discussion about whether or not to use the Bauer building, you're talking about property tax. It just feels like this awkward thing that we need to discuss maybe as a council.
Yep.
If we feel good, let's do it. I mean, if we feel that's appropriate. It may not feel good after, but here we go. So yeah, I mean, keep going, Corey.
Yeah, I mean, hey, you can get into the philosophy of it. Some people, you hear a lot about, well, sales tax or regressive tax, and yeah, that's one thing that I've heard a lot from some people who are opposed to a sales tax being used. And I don't know, my kind of argument's been there the whole time that, if you were to have something bigger that would require a sales tax and a property tax and a membership fee, then you're marginalizing, kids maybe like me who are running around who couldn't have afforded a membership, and that an open, free community center is one heck of a bang for your buck, and it doesn't regressively affect you as much as people say it might. Obviously, if you include property tax in it, you do get a bigger one, and that membership fee kind of equation in there too. So I think that's the discussion. We have seen some opposition to property tax being used. We've seen a lot, whether you like the way it's been put online or not. And I think, upwards of 90% of the people said they didn't want to see that thing funded with property tax. And that's where I've been through this whole process. This is like, well, I mean, we can want all we want. We can build the Taj Mahal here, but if people aren't going to pass it, because with the last poll showed 50-50 for just sales tax. And so that's where I'm struggling. Big time.
I have the same concerns. Unequivocally, the citizens have made it clear, we do not want a property tax over and over again. Every meeting, that's what we would hear from the citizens in their discussions. And there is no path to a community center that is bigger or new without property tax increase. It's not possible. So I feel like we're going to spin our wheels on this, and in a year, maybe even 6 months, we're going to be having the same discussion. And, we're not going to be taking advantage of the opportunities that we have presented to us right now to give the community what they want, to give them something that this community can afford and that is the right size, while also saving a historic building that we have to do something with. So, I'm worried, guys. There's been a lot of work on this, and these people have done their due diligence. They have beat the streets, talked to countless citizens, met with every group we can think of. Lynn, bless her heart, has come up with communication plan after communication plan until we felt like we were beating a dead horse. So for all of that work to be for naught, just for us to probably end up right back at this same place is very disheartening.
Well, the ultimate question in front of the council is whether to put it on a ballot or not, whether, whether you like the project or not. That's all, that is the question.
Well, it goes a little deeper than that, though, because the question is, you're asking the citizens, do you want to use exclusively sales tax or property tax? And I think that's the deeper question. When you're putting it to a ballot, that's what you're asking.
Yes. The question that was presented to the council, or the recommendation that was presented to the council was based on sales tax.
Right.
The council's decision then is to accept that recommendation, change that recommendation, or rebuff that recommendation. That's essentially the question here. The project is, some people are going to like it, some people aren't. You're never going to really know that question until it's voted on. You just won't. We can beat around all we want. Me personally, again, when I talk to people, property tax just is a non-starter on any type of community center. I do remember going to all the meetings a few years ago, not saying that that's the same plan that, that would be ultimately come forward. But I remember a lot of opposition at those meetings. Also, I don't know if property tax is our question, because the rec is funded through the school district property tax. That's not our population that we govern. So,
But that's the population you're asking the citizens to allow a district of 10,000 patrons to be able to use for free. If the citizens decide that, and I get that there'll be visitors paying it and it's spread out. I understand it. I'm not against the sales tax, but who are we doing this for and who are we voted in by? I understand. I don't want to cut you off because you were in the middle of it. I can wait my turn.
Go ahead.
Okay. So I've got a son that plays basketball and a daughter that plays competitive volleyball right now. And so I've been all around the league so we went to Garnett and they have an old gym. I'll make this short. They must have torn the old high school down and left the gym. So it's really a lot like our Bauer building. And they also have an indoor rec center that they renovated, an old administrative building that might have been an old elementary school or something like that. And so I sit in there and I ask myself, how are they able to do both? in Garnett, Kansas, or in Osawatomie, if you go to Osawatomie and tell them that their property tax didn't give them what they wanted, they've got a gorgeous rec center in Osawatomie. Nothing against Osawatomie, I'd rather live here. I'm just gonna leave it at that. But
You better say that.
I think, but here's the thing. What I want to say is I understand that people talk to us and say, I don't want a property tax increase. I think most people don't want any tax increase. They would just love to have whatever we give you money for. We love you. You just made it work, and I get that can't happen either. But is this our goal to decide on a community center? When I read the recreation's strategic plan, which I have in my bag, that was their goal always to do. And that's where I struggle, is I understand the partnership and I want us to work together. I want this building to be saved. I think all 5 of us might agree that the building needs to be saved. I don't know if anybody says no on that. So we made it that far. And I've told Casey this before, I don't know if this is the city of Baldwin City's business to be deciding. I'm not against the sales tax ballot, but I don't know that we are a recreation department. I worked in Salina for a recreation commission that became a city parks and rec department, and we don't want that to happen here, or we have the poorest rec department in the world. But he doesn't want that mill. He's happy with the rec commission mills, but I just sometimes wonder if we are forcing our vision of this building on another governing body that represents places outside my boundaries as a representative of the citizens. So sometimes I question, am I doing the right thing by either pushing this or not? That relationship with the rec commission is what we committed to on that Saturday. And that's what I hope that we can help them with their goal. If they fail, they fail. We keep saying we're doing this because we feel that we can't have the bigger thing. But yet, why does every other town I go to have the bigger thing? Maybe they don't have something else. They don't have Sullivan Square, don't have a new police department. It's apples to oranges, I understand that, but maybe our goal should be to do both. And if we never get there, we never get there, but we're limiting our expectations here by saying, we'll never have this because 4 people told me. No. More than 4 people voted for each and every one of us up here. I'm not saying that they'll vote for a rec center, but I don't know if it's our goal to fail at or succeed. I think in my mind, we're the supportive role in that goal. And then we go to the Recreation Commission and say, we need help saving this building. If it's a basketball court with no offices in it, would you still program it? Maybe you don't live there. Maybe your offices aren't there. But would you still help us with activities? I wonder if the answer would be yes. I would like to know that, because I got the letter that you all got today. I don't know where we're at. I realize what people are telling you about property tax. I wish our goal was to do both. I went all over the place there. I apologize.
No, I'm glad you said everything you said. Scott, you were nodding a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said a lot, and I agree. I think with most of it, first of all, to respond to the work the advisory committee did. It's not wasted. I mean, it wouldn't be wasted if we did this for a year from now. Everything they've done could be usable at any point in time in the future. So I don't think I disagree that effort's wasted whether we go forward or not. I think it was well thought out, a lot of hard work. The problem I always struggle with is if we had this conversation a year ago and we were prioritizing this, I think we would have the community center as an item and we would have Save the Bower building as another item on the list. And where they got combined is, I think, where we started down a path that we all thought was self-fulfilling because of, I think how it was approached, the questions that were asked. I agree, no one's going to say, I want to raise my property tax. However, for projects that enough of the community gets behind, they do that. They vote to raise their property taxes because of what they're getting. So I think you brought up some alternate funding. I think we kind of jumped to the funding conclusion immediately and said everything else is off the table, where I think it's a discussion to what you said with the rec commission that supports a much bigger community about their long-range plan and our long-range plan, including the school district's long-range plan. Is there something there that we all can participate in? And if we can save the Bauer building as part of it, fantastic. You know, that's the second goal we have. But, you know, when you say raise your property tax, you know, how much of a percentage of a mill would it take to do what we're proposing here? Are there really alternate ways that we could do both? I mean, I don't think we've explored it enough. We just get so much feedback of no taxes. I don't even know if I want to do a sales tax, certainly not a property tax, but property tax expands it to really the user base. If we go school district, you know, wide property tax. So to me, it's really that alignment of planning with those three stakeholders. And if it comes to a property tax increase, then people will say, I now know what I'm saying no to. It's this, I don't want it. And then we always have this. Is this acceptable? If this isn't, is this? So I would prefer to explore options and have input, to have people say we would really get a sense for, we don't want anything more. This is all the programming we want. And that's where I think I just have a problem with how we got here. You know, we missed some steps, I think. We missed some stakeholder input along the way. And I don't blame anybody for it. It happens, right? And so I'm just sitting here as one vote saying, I'm not happy with how we got here. I think there's additional conversation to be had. I will not have a problem if we go through this additional conversation, and it's more than one meeting, but we get back to, you know what? All the stakeholders now agree that what this committee has come up with is exactly what we want to do. All three stakeholders go, yes. I'm comfortable with it at that point, because then everybody's on board.
Yeah.
And everybody's made that conscious decision, as opposed to this, take it or leave it, yes or no. And that's a hard decision, because I don't know what the alternatives are. If you tell me yes or no, and I don't have it, I'm going to say yes, because I don't have anything right now. And that's my biggest problem with this vote is it is binding for a larger something that the rec center may want to do, or the school district may want to leverage. And this vote's going to dictate that, and people may not realize that.
Well, and this makes me encouraged that we are meeting with the rec a week and a half or what it is from now, because that's exactly what we need to be discussing with them about, as far as all the points you laid out. Now, something I have come to realize here in the final minutes here, however long the stretch of time is that, and I don't know why it didn't dawn on me. I guess the more we talked it out, the more I just kind of got there. But we're talking apples and oranges with the rec center and community center, and that's why I think that the disconnect's been the whole time. It's been that, you know, we've been, you know, you can be able to shoot a basketball, you're gonna be able to bump a volleyball, you're gonna be able to hit in the batting cage. That's recreation, and that's why wouldn't you like that, you know, kind of thing. And then it was a conversation that we had with Matt actually at our meeting on Thursday, and it just dawned on me that, I mean, they're talking about programming, they're talking about, you know, a lot of stuff, and that's never, I guess, really where the advisory group has maybe been. And I was so glad you brought up Garnett, that they have both, and they somehow figured out a way to do that. Now I know, you know, it was a conversation that I had with Glenn one time about one of the towns out in western Kansas that had a big rec center,
Right.
And it's because membership out there was just through the roof, because where else are you going to go?
Exactly.
And so I wonder if you get more rural, you do see more grandeur, you know, plans like that. I don't know. But I guess for a strategic planning conversation, we do need to differentiate that we are talking about a community center here and not a rec center. And that but the rec may not be able to use it, but the citizens might.
So that's may take more time.
Right.
I understand that we want this to happen soon, but to what Scott said, it just, there may have been some steps that we didn't realize, and that's okay. That's what I want everyone to understand. I feel it's okay that we're at this point, that if we're not ready, we can keep going. I don't know, and it's different in every town, like you said. It's apples to oranges. There's things that Garnett doesn't have that we have here in Baldwin, and just different priorities, and that's why we're doing this here. I will say that there's a website that has every single WPA project categorized, and so you can get on there and see all the gyms that have been done across the nation. And so what do I do on my Saturday nights? I go through and look at every single one. I look up to see, did it get saved? Was it raised? How did they save it? Taxes, whatever. I found one in Archer, Florida, which is south of Gainesville. It's about the same distance from us to Lawrence, so it's a little town of 1,800. It's not an affluent town, but they had one council member, and she raised $900,000 to save almost the exact project for her city. Not saying that that's the route that we need to take. I don't disagree with the sales tax. I worry about, are we balancing out what that needs to be used for? But there are examples out there. This building was not on the Historic National Registry. Most of these WPA projects are not. We got on there because of the person that designed this, not because it was WPA. And so she had to raise all of that money on her own. After that, her very next project was a cemetery, much like our Pioneer Cemetery, which we had somebody that raised that money. And as that person was walking out of our council meeting, the mayor said, there needs to be more people like you, or you said something along those lines. Thank you for doing that. I wish there were more people like you. That's the kind of people I feel that can help save this building. I realize about the tax credits. I didn't know that, the information that you shared.
Right.
I feel that hasn't been, those credits haven't been sold yet. So I feel that there are grant opportunities that are due March 1st that we could apply for and get the mold taken care of, but that's just me. I still think that you can do this piece by piece. I'm not against the plan that was presented. If we need to move forward as a council, I'll do it. But I just feel that there hasn't been enough discussion as far as process, like what Scott was saying, and I'm not sure how we get there on that.
That's the question. I mean, we have these grievances about the process and timing and all that. Well, what do we do with it? Where do we start?
I think part of it is understanding our relationship with the Recreation Commission. So in 2010, we have a Parks and Trails study. So the council, we adopt Parks and Trails plan, master plan. And in that plan in 2010, they studied the same topic. And there's a picture of the Bauer building in that. You can go on our website, it's on there. And they identified parts of town where a community center would work. They did surveys. In those surveys, they talked about an indoor track. They didn't even talk about a pool so much, but we had a citizen group back then do that work. 2010 is much different than today, as we all know. So I'm not against that we have a new advisory group taking a look at it. But there was some institutional knowledge that was created already that I felt could have been, and I don't know that it wasn't looked at in your committee, but could have been taken to say, okay, the community has spoken once before, it was 10 years ago. How do we deal with that, with what they wanted? I'm not saying it wasn't looked at, but.
Actually, before then, it was North Park.
What's that?
North Park was before that study.
What's that?
North Park is where Signal Ridge is.
Oh, okay.
There's going to be a big recreation facility kind of there. That was in the late 90s.
Right. So, so I think when we get together at that work session, I kind of want to talk about that a lot of this work has been done, that's been done again. How do we try to find common ground to me, it's a saving the building project, and then there's a recreation style community center project. I believe this is a community center that you can dribble a basketball and do those things, but I just think the styles are different and the population served are different. Well, who we serve and who they serve.
Well, it is, and I'll parlay off that. I mean, even based on their letter, they talked about competition stuff. Well, I can argue both sides of it. Yeah, competition stuff could bring in, some economic sales tax revenues. But I also had citizens this summer that were complaining about all the competitions out at the ball field. So, for me, I'm simply just thinking our citizens, and that's kind of, same type of thing, same thing that I think both of you guys are kind of saying as far as I just think of this as a community center. I do not in any way, shape, or form think of this as a recreation facility, because I've been in those, just like Brian, and I think it's two different things.
but then that's who we're asking to be in it.
Right.
And so when my wife says it's time to sign Nate up for something, or Allie, it's you go to the rec. You can't do anything in that rec office but play cards and do work, but you go to the rec, and I just feel that we're asking them to come in. It makes it a rec center if they house themselves there.
But if that's, and I think that'll be part of the work session, is that I mean, if it's the housing part of it, I mean, I guess in my mind, I was always thinking of it similar to Sullivan Square or
I'm saying how the community might interpret if their offices are there, and saying I'm going to the rec. I'm not talking about the name, but how they see that, and then if it comes time for them to move forward with the project that they wanted, people will say, well, you got this. This is where you're at, and maybe that's the right place for them to be. I don't know, but I feel that we're saying it's not a rec center. I've heard that it's not a rec, not a rec, not a rec. Who's the first person we go ask to be in it? The rec. So if it's not a rec, then what is it?
Well, I
who
think
is
from
it?
the committee standpoint, that was trying to, hey, this would be
Right.
a good move from them. They'd save rent money, different things like that.
But and that's for them to decide, their commission.
Now, if you had anything you wanted to add, I don't want to talk over you.
I agree with everything you said. I'm kind of like, I think you had said before, that we have this building and we want to put something in it, but I'm not sure this is what should be in it. I mean, not that it can't be a community center, but my thing is, okay, the money that it's going to take to finish up this building, even if it's just funded by a sales tax, which everybody will have to pay, it seems like we could work towards a bigger building that would service more people. Be able to do tournaments in or whatever. And I think the Bauer building is not, kids don't need a place to go, but to me, it's just a building for the kids to play in. And I know you can do receptions or,
Sure.
rent it out or free to groups that want to go in and do, birthday party or whatever. But other than that, I don't see that it's really functional for what we would want as a community/rec.
See, I guess I would disagree on that with you, because we did talk to senior groups that said they would use it for various of their activities, as well as people that, there's a swing dancing group I think they talked to. I mean, groups that I didn't know there was a swing dancing group. I'd like to join it. But just different groups like that you don't even think about, because Bolton really doesn't even have a space. I mean, a community space for that. Yeah, we have the high school gyms, but they're taken up. I mean, they're taken up and quite often. I think it's been a couple of years since I think they've even had like Sunday open gym time to where you can go shoot baskets and stuff like that. So I disagree. I do truly see this as a community center, and not as a rec center, because again, I agree with them. You can't hold tournaments in there. You can't do all this stuff, and it's not a full-size court. But I think there's a need for not a full-size court too. I think there's a use for that.
Well, and what Jay drew up was just for visual, kind of get us a start, but the second floor of that, and even the first floor had classrooms for programming in those. Not everything has to be with a basketball. Nothing has to involve a ball. I mean, there's plenty of opportunities, classes that can be going on in those, plenty of programming that you can do that doesn't involve sports. And that goes back to more the community center versus the rec center type, idea. And so, I don't know. I mean, it's a tough call, and a part of it being such a tough call for this council almost makes me want to put it to a referendum. This is too hard for the council to decide. Let the citizens decide. And there's a part of me that wants to do that, because this is very hard. You have many, many moving pieces. There's a lot of people who can lose, and I don't know. That's part of me that just says, yeah, I'd like to almost see it as a vote, and if it's no, fine. But I don't know. We got to, I think, maybe get some direction from our meeting with the rec on
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, I'm hopeful we have a takeaway from that, better direction.
I think you just gotta be careful going to the voters for funding requests. You gotta be pretty spot on that you're gonna live with this, yes or no, and not approach it again for a period of time.
Right.
And I just wanna make sure we come forward with our best possible solution. In my mind, it's a rec center that can also easily include the community center piece of it, if it's done right. So it's just, I'm not thinking of a gigantic building, I'm thinking of something, that does more of both, or more of the rec piece. And I think that's, to me, I'd love to take it to a vote. I just don't want to take it to a vote when I think what's on the ballot is not what ideally all the stakeholders would like to see on the ballot.
Right.
And that's the only reason I'm hesitant to do that, because I don't think we turn around and then next year and go through this and ask again. Maybe it's for part of a property tax, so you got to be careful. And just saying, we were elected not to take everything to a vote by the citizens. That's part of our job, is to be very judicious about when you do that. And in my mind, it needs to be, we're all behind this. If you don't want this, then future council will address it.
Yeah.
But don't you think that could work the opposite way? I mean, you make a bigger building that it has to, because we know a bigger building has to include property tax. And you put that to a vote over this,
Well, I think
that fails, and then.
Well, I think as you go through this process, you're talking to people about both, right?
Right.
And only thing that's been talked about on this is this outcome. There was no other alternative. We now know what this would be, and I think we can incorporate these other stakeholders and come up with maybe an alternative with different funding. But then you go to these groups and say, here are, which one would you prefer? And be clear about the funding, because that has to be discussed right up front. To your point, we can't ignore that. We need to talk about that early with the rec and what they want to do and what that would mean. So you need to put something forward that has support. But I just think we've done this one thing and they don't know that there's possibly something else that we could do.
Well, and my vision always was, when I got on CDC, was it October, September? I can't remember. But my first suggestion was, community center, and have it check some of the boxes off for the rec, and then have something, come up with something else. And I thought we were there for a while, because that went through the committee. That
It did, and we talked to the rec and said, go get your plan, and
it's just, it's just.
So I think you brought it up. If it's a longer range plan that the rec and the school district supports, you don't have to fund it all immediately.
Right.
It's a plan to do this, and then here are the steps.
and that's what we talked about. Yeah.
Right. But so that would be more, I think, palatable. And as you go to the voters, have been through this before, the more you have on there, so there's different constituents that want different things. And some of them won't support anything unless they have what they want. I mean, that's just kind of human nature. So the more things that you can put in here that's reasonable, that someone's willing to say, I really want that, I'm willing to pay whatever the funding mechanism is, even though I'm not going to use the rest of it, but I get what I want. Your chances of actually having something pass through are just dramatically increased, as opposed to a very narrow, use case where a certain set of people would use it, and the other one's like, I'm not paying anything for that,
Right.
or wouldn't even support any tax on that. So, in my mind, that's what I've always been looking for: is what does that look like? We may end up right back where we're at, but then we'll know, I think, to a much higher level of confidence that this is what the community would support. We got data because we've showed them something else, and it's right back here. And I don't think we've wasted any of the work. I think it's all still valuable. We could do it a year from now and start right where we're at today. So that's all I'm asking for, is that level of discretion to take to the voters, or ask the voters about ahead of time, and then take something to the ballot that we think will pass.
Yeah.
The other thing we might consider, and I don't know if everybody here knows it, but we already have a quality of life sales tax that apparently does not sunset. Glenn, we're paying off the library edition with that still? How much longer?
Yes, that was the last time we did
Right.
quality of life. I think about 2009. There was a couple of projects. One was the library, and I think there was some sewer line repairs, infrastructure repairs was done. So that was kind of broadly conceived as quality of life. So I think that's going to be a while. It's not, next year or something that'll be dropping off. But
But
it
is
does,
it-
you're correct, it does not sunset.
But I thought, is it like 5 years maybe?
Yeah, I think it's within
I think
5
it's
or
around
6 years.
5-6 years.
But as we strategically plan to keep, I mean, it's something we might keep in mind because after that's paid off, then that money is available for what the council decides for quality of life.
It is, but that's to be, as defined as quality of life, which is pretty broad. As I remember, the referendum was rather broad as far as that goes.
How much
So-
is it?
I forget how much they actually did, but right now,
You can collect around 120,000 a year.
So it's about a half cent.
Well, a quarter
Quarter
cent.
cent,
A
yeah.
quarter cent brings 110 to 120. We always estimate pretty low, so that's what we're doing. That's what you're talking about.
So this council couldn't assign that, obviously, because it'll be years.
Right.
If we have that in our heads that that's there, and at some point that's going to provide funding for quality of life, something. So I was weighing out the community center thinking, well, maybe it is okay that this goes to a sales tax issue now,
I see what you're
because
saying.
in 5 years, then that quality of life funding becomes available for some purpose that we might need it for.
Sure.
It could go the other way too,
It could,
in
yeah.
your mind, but that's where I was thinking, possibly that would make it more okay for me to go for a sales tax right now, knowing that there is another revenue stream that never sunsets, available in a few years as whoever is on council looks at this and throws it out the window, whatever, but as we move forward.
That's good thinking.
So, as far as this topic goes, do we feel we've discussed enough that we can move on so we know we've got our work session?
Yeah, we got the work session.
I think it was good discussion though.
Yeah, it helps
was
me.
very good discussion.
Sometimes in work session, that's the best place to. So for right now, that we'll just have a placeholder for this, and as we know more here in the next month or so, few weeks, we can plug that back in. So that leaves City Lake, Library, and Pool as the other big things that we had talked about. And sidewalks, which to me, that's probably the easiest one, given the structure that it has. So which one would you guys like to tackle next? And maybe we'll take.
I do think you have to still talk about sidewalks because we did apply for a grant.
Okay.
And if we get that grant, we are going to have to fund it.
So that's a budget issue for
So,
the next
yeah,
round
so
of TA.
Just
They
for the
all-
council and for strategic planning, we did apply for that. We should find
We
out.
did, yeah, we should be
Next
finding
month.
out here in February whether or not we got funded on that. That'll be the third one,
Right.
or fourth, I guess, but losing track. At least the third.
And do we remember the size of this round?
I think it was around 600,000 to 700,000, if I remember right.
Our share or
No, no,
80,
no,
20?
the
Total project.
So it wasn't as big as,
Total project.
So it's like 120,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just for the council, I guess, to be thinking about now, if we do get that.
and I think that grant would then finish the safe routes to school. I can't remember how they explained it to me.
It would if we get the full thing.
Right.
Because we have phase 1 and phase 2 in there. If we just get phase 1, we'd still have phase 2, and I believe phase 2 was up by the, by like Eisenhower Street up by the schools up in
Okay.
that area to 6th Street, if I remember correctly. That side.
Yeah, and then most of the 11th Street would be the big,
11th Street's the big part of this
Yeah.
grant.
So the library's already in the budget at a certain level, right? I mean, are we talking about increasing that? We don't really know. There's not a request necessarily.
Well, I mean, I know in legislative, we've had some information about district libraries. And from my viewpoint, it seemed like it was increasingly more difficult to do that, especially if we hit that 5,000 person limit. If I remember right, then you're sort of compelled to be a city library, which we already are, unless you have a special exemption, which I think Eudora got an exemption because they were a township library all along, but So if we do hit that at the census, so we were talking about in legislative, kind of keeping our eye on that. I don't, has it been to any other committee, finance?
Not yet.
I don't know what else until we have some sort of request. I know Wendy was going to provide more information
Right.
comparing other libraries.
Communities, yeah.
So
I think so.
sidewalks may require funding,
Correct.
most likely will.
Yeah.
I mean, most likely.
We have a little bit of funding still left in sidewalks.
Okay.
We have that, our grant program that, where we do matching with the citizens based on our last bond.
Right.
I don't know how much is still left in there. I think we
Not much,
still got some left in there, but yes, it will.
Right. And so library may be, there may be an ask to increase that funding. We don't know yet, but it's certainly in there in the budget. Pool, I think, is one where we need to figure out from a timing perspective, do we think that's 2022 budget or is it beyond that? But that will require funding. And then the city lake would require some funding as well. So in my mind, those are the things for prioritization of a 2022 budget, depending on when you would want to get started on those. Maybe we do them all if we decide we have the money to do that. But if we don't, I think you do need to prioritize and say, oh, we just ran out and these bottom two don't happen. It makes it easier to have that conversation because we've already had it.
Right.
So from a pool, I mean, what are you hearing from the,
Well, they're always having to work on it. They just got some parts in, they're gonna replace, and we're gonna do that in March after the weather warms up. But I guess the way the pool was designed, there's I'm not explaining this the right way, but there's like a box that they have to get into, like to turn on the lights and stuff. And that box is not supposed to be open, so it gets corroded in there and rusty and everything. So then they have to put new parts in it. And so, you know, they're all the time saying, you know, it's 25 years old, but eventually they're gonna have to do, the city's gonna have to do something.
right?
But does that mean upgrade infrastructurally, or does that mean
Well,
get in the big digger?
I think it's probably a choice at that
Yeah.
time. You get to do one or the other.
I mean, they don't know. I mean,
Right.
it's not up to them what to do. They're just saying, council's gonna have to be thinking about it.
I think they kind of mentioned, if I remember right, 4 to 5 years is when it's really going to get.
Make a decision on.
Yeah. And again, I think that wraps around, unfortunately, to the community center talk, because we got the quality of life sales tax expiring at the library. You know, so it's all intertwined a little bit. And you know, there hasn't been any studies done on the swimming pool yet or anything like that. So
So I think the question is from the city staff is, I mean, it's a line item already. We're already funding it on an annual basis, and we can look back and see what that is. And it sounds like the expected maintenance and costs would be that, maybe more, depending on things that break. So in my mind, it's either we keep it in the budget, currently funded, or we don't, and that's a big decision. But if we do, then we need some guidance on, is it a 4-year, what's the best guess on understanding when that big decision will have to be made about replacement or something else, and put that kind of in our plan. Stays on here, but it's a fund as needed until we believe in 4 years there's gonna be a decision made. And maybe as we go through this, we get some cost estimates, we decide that's what we wanna do, we start putting aside, or we start, a fund to try to get ahead of that. Would be my recommendation on how we do the pool. It doesn't sound like it's incremental funding to the current budget
Right.
necessarily. Yeah.
So I think for a goal for now is to begin studying it. So if we ask for like Rob for like a needs assessment of what's going on, I think he would be happy to provide a list. He always does. So we can kind of get a picture, because I know every month they sound like they stress out about the pool quite a bit. So I think that's a good beginning to a strategic plan. So maybe in 5 years, we know where we're at. We have the options. But to begin looking at it this year.
So I think the missing piece here, Corey, is really what are the options at the city lake, you know, in the requisite funding that would be required. Then we can, you know, because it's obviously on the list above the green space stuff, or that's part of it, but the top list of that. So
Sure.
I think in my mind that's the missing piece. I don't know what the vision is for what that would be and what the cost would be to get there. Maybe it's a phased project, so I don't know if, you know.
Well, Rob has on here, a 250,000, with a couple of question marks, so.
That was a few years ago, I think, so. Yeah.
Just to
Just to
fix
dredge
the
it out.
For the
levee?
city lake,
What's that?
To dredge and fix it.
Just to get it back to holding water.
Green Community Bills.
I think right now it's what, 2 feet deep?
Right. And then anything else you wanted to do from a programming perspective would be addition to that. But that would get it back to, I guess, prior state.
Well, I think the bigger question is, yeah, I mean, what's our stomach for that? You know, I mean, where's no different than any other thing. What's the cost benefit analysis
Yeah.
of that space out there? Is it, more cost effective to put $250,000 into that, or $250,000 into something else in town? Whether it's buried power lines, so we don't,
Right.
stuff like that. So.
And that gets into the cross, budgeting of a quality of life versus infrastructure. Those decisions have to be made. In my mind, the first one is, hey, quality of life, here's what we're currently spending. We think based on these projects we could do X more. And does it include $250,000 to do to fix the city lake? And if we do that, maybe it has to move up and some of the other things have to move down and off for the next year or whatever. So it's those decisions from prioritization that we have to make. Otherwise we're scrambling at the last second and making, I think less informed decisions around budget because the deadlines don't move. So I've always envisioned having that at least initial pass on prioritization decision list. So then we come, to the budget and go, well, here's what we got. Here's what the numbers look like. In each one of those pillars that we've decided on, first pass is the buckets here. How far down does it go? Oh, it doesn't catch what we wanted to do. Maybe move something over from here. But you have that level of discussion. If you prepare well enough that you could actually get through that in a couple of meetings and make decisions based on our vision. This
Right.
supports it. Something has to be delayed till next year, right? And that moves up to the top of next year or the following year. I mean, it's simplistic, but I'd love for us to get at least closer to having that level of, budget knowledge and decision making as a group.
I don't know if this helps or not, but there are some state grants available for the city lake. We met last year with some folks from Fish and Wildlife, and they're pretty, they would cover a pretty good amount of the cost.
Tremendously helpful.
I don't know if that's helpful or not.
I need to know if it's,
I couldn't think of anything more helpful, actually.
if it's a priority, then we can pursue that. I don't want to go pursue a grant for it.
No, I agree.
Yeah, it's not a priority
Yeah,
for the council.
good point.
If it is, we can investigate that further. Rob and I have met with them last year, just briefly as an introduction.
Yeah.
I said, so I don't know what their budget looks like this year, but
Right.
we can go pursue that if you'd like to.
Right.
That's a good
And see if we
strategic
can,
goal.
what we can
It
get
is
on
good.
that. So,
And then if we can't get it this year, maybe next year. Some of
yeah,
those where you're
they're always competitive, but
Yeah.
we've done pretty well on that lately. So, and it just needs it. They know about our lake. They approached us about it actually. So they realize the lake is going down, and we got a severe problem there. That's not going to go away on its own.
Yeah.
So how much funding they have this year, I don't know, but
Okay.
we can take a look at that. And see
I
what
think
we
that's the
got.
hard part of trying to, for me, in my mind, just the way I'm thinking of it, to prioritize, because I think, okay, are we going to pigeonhole ourselves into saying, well, we know this grant's available, but this was number 4 on, you know what I'm saying? I don't
Yeah.
want to get to that level where it
No.
creates a conflict on a discussion because
It
it's
creates a
not.
decision point. I mean, all it does creates a decision. I mean, and that should be made with as much information as you have. That's all it does. I mean, it's not a conflict. It's like, do we want to do this? And we know there's grants. We may know the size. We'll know what our budget looks like. So to me, you don't pigeonhole yourself in there. You're making an informed decision as opposed to, let's do these things and then, find out that there was things available to you that you didn't take advantage of. So I disagree. I think you're not pigeonholing yourself. You're getting as much information on the table as possible.
And as far as the plan goes, we talked about doing quarterly check-ins.
Yeah.
And I don't know that that needs to be a work session, or if the mayor wants to make an discussion item that we can check in, or a staff report. So if we applied for the grant or it just didn't work, and we can adjust the plan as we go. But to me, researching that, and they've already done a little bit of that, that's a good start, just like the pool, to start gathering information this year so that in the next few years we can start to budget based off that information. So I think that's a good goal to start with. Sometimes I struggle with how the people that use that park, they're very passionate about that space. And I know that we've mentioned before that you don't really want to give up green space as a city. It's separated from the city, and we have to talk about an infrastructure, that water line that goes out there. That's going to be a really tough point at the next work session. Those two aren't always tied together in my mind, but sometimes I think if you commit to one, it might change how you feel about the other.
It does.
But if there is a possibility, and we research that, if we find out it works, great. If it doesn't, then we adjust. There might be some budget money that we have to put towards it if it doesn't cover everything. But I think it's a good start.
I think it'd definitely help me to know if we could get a grant for it versus, slapping 250 grand of cash down on it.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely changes the priority
Yeah.
of the project.
And the
It's
other
hard to know
benefit-
how it impacts every citizen, or
Right.
all citizens, as many as it can, being so far away. I don't visit.
That's the
it
hard
very
part
often.
about that space. God, I just wish it was right next to town.
It would be
Where-
great if it was
Yeah.
right next
I
to
think it took me about 5 years of living here to figure out what this is.
the disc golf people love it, like
Yeah.
around the whole
Yeah, those guys
KC
are
area.
very passionate about their disc golf too.
But I went on a lot of calls there as a trooper too.
Right.
You get a lot of fishing out there.
I wasn't
Well, that's-
fishing.
That's the other benefit of strategic planning, though, is you do get to prioritize, but at the same time, you're touching on all these things
Yeah.
every
Right.
3 months,
Yeah.
so.
And hopefully, then
Right.
it won't take
And
as
it'll
long
change.
every time
I
you
Yeah.
do
mean,
it.
things will pop up. You'll get a building donated to you didn't have. Now you got
Right.
to figure out where
Yeah.
that lands. I mean,
Right, and we talked about that.
It
how I
happens that way.
Oh, 5 years from now, you're gonna be like, there's a lake out there?
Time and change our decisions.
Yes.
So we
I
feel
used to
that that's
live
good
there.
direction for City
Great
Lake,
place to
right?
grow.
Lincoln?
Oh, yeah.
So we're gonna do that with City Lake, start to research grants, start that back up again with the pool. We talked about collecting information, at least on the pool we have now, and then we can move into options after that. The library, we're continuing to work with them and their board and their director, and we will wait for more information from them and then plug that in. And then sidewalks, we talked about our next round of TA grant funding that we, if we're awarded, we will be committed to that share of that program. I feel like all of these things meet that vision statement that we talked about at the beginning. Is there anything we left out or forgot to talk about? And does everybody feel comfortable moving forward with what we just did? Good?
Good.
Yeah,
Good.
nice work.
So just a few more things. If you don't have a sentence on your definition of economic development, you won't fail the class. I don't know that I have a sentence either. But just to introduce talking about economic development, because that will be the meat of our next session. So I have this down. What is your one sentence definition? And if you have a sentence and you want to share it, great. Does anybody have one?
My sentence is sustained effort to improve and grow both the local economy and the quality of life for its citizens.
Good. I totally agree with that. I feel like a lot of what we do, quality of life, is really the goal, that we want businesses to be healthy, but really it comes down to the citizen every single time and what they're provided. So I would agree. I'm going
like
to
it.
steal that. Anybody else want to share theirs?
Not anymore.
That was really good. I'm not doing it.
I've got one. It was tough to come up with this
Yeah.
too, because economic development is so broad, it can encompass so many things. Mine was economic development as an action or creation of a plan resulting in the improved economic health of the community.
That's,
I like that one too.
wow. Corey? No, me neither. Mine was basically Julie's. I feel the economic development, the tools and relationships that a city has to help drive quality of life. That's the outcome,
Right.
in my mind, of economic
And
development.
I think the major word in this is sustain,
Mhm.
not just do something and then not ever follow up with
Right.
anything else.
I agree.
Do you have anything, Casey?
No, I mean, I think just the main thing to think about economic development is essentially that's the driving force for your funding mechanisms for a lot of your city services. So you know, without a healthy economic development in your community, you don't have funding for the quality of life or infrastructure projects that the community wants or needs.
Exactly.
Yep.
So that Saturday that we met at our retreat, we came up with 3, according to the facilitator, economic development goals. Scott and I moved one of those out because it was the community center was in with those 3. So we kept that in quality of life because we'd already started that conversation. But as we reviewed, there were 2 other goals, and I think we'll know more about some other things that we're doing that we'll be able to plug that in. First one was to develop tourism plan to increase tourism opportunities. I'll just start this off. I'm waiting to know more about Main Street. I feel that that's going to, if we do that, if we're awarded or if we stay in affiliate, however that works, I feel either way it's going to have a major impact on how we can do tourism. So I don't know if you guys want to share any more about the process so far. I think your application is coming up.
We're about done. Yeah,
Okay.
we submitted on the 29th.
Friday's deadline.
Yeah, we been meeting with Scott. Well, we actually only got to meet with him the one time because he didn't make the second meeting. But Scott Sewell's the Main Street director for Kansas, and yeah, I don't know. He kind of gave us some optimism that he thinks the way he was speaking that he started off saying 2 or 3 this year, and by the end of our conversation, by the end of our conversation, well, geez, there's no wood around here.
Look at that, the wall. Okay. Now
You heard it Facebook?
But he mentioned 3 or 4 by the end of it. I don't know. It's just.
gonna find guilty.
I do like our chances of getting there. I really do. I think
Optimistic.
Thank you.
If you go through the application, you read everything. You're just like, this is Baldwin.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just, but you don't want to count your chickens before they hatch and all that stuff. If we don't get in this year, we can always try again next year. It doesn't change the fact that we can't still do Main Street as an
Exactly.
affiliate member. So, I'm very encouraged by it. I really hope that we get in this year. But if we don't, that's okay too. We just keep on trying. But it does, Main Street's big thing is historic preservation and tourism, and that's.
Like you said, Baldwin.
You can get some experts in
Yeah.
here talking to you about all that. They'll help us guide our strategic plan there.
I wrote Main Street down on that one as well.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that encompasses it. And I think it still supports the definitions that you guys brought forward on economic development, right? Because that would drive economic development. So I think we proceed forward with that. I think you guys had a feedback session, or I don't know if you got any negative input from that, or
I wouldn't say.
No, it's not that.
negative.
We have a lot of questions from the Chamber of Commerce, because what we're doing is proposing merging the Chamber
Right.
and Main Street together under one umbrella organization and kind of reorganizing them into a 501c3 from a C6. So they had a lot of questions about the mechanics of doing
Okay.
that. But I think everybody we've talked to, whether they're downtown business owners or chamber members or whoever, sees the value of doing this. They're not opposed to applying or being a member. They just want to know more about it. That's where the program's at right now.
so. Yeah, I mean, for me on it's Main Street. Whether we get in this year or not, if the council thinks it's the right thing to do, we move forward with that as an affiliate member, as part of this, increased tourism opportunity that we all thought should be on the list.
Yeah.
One of the things I liked with what I heard was that we would be receiving data, basically, so a market study
Yeah.
out of the gate. And so often when we do economic development here, we don't have that kind of feedback right away to base decisions on. So I was
Right.
really impressed with the structure, with the resources, the support. I wish you guys luck.
Do not let us down.
I did.
Here now.
We were going through that application
I'm
process, and I don't remember who it was. I think it was Jeanette who said it. She was like, "This is strategic planning." It was
Yeah,
just
it
the
is.
application.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just the question. Of, so it really is inherent almost in the Main Street membership. It's a lot of strategic planning.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it has that structure there for the program, whereas
Mhm.
sometimes our entities, we struggle with that. And the council struggles because we don't know what to expect
Right.
out of groups and how they report. But it's set. I'm looking forward to seeing and hearing more about it. For me, with tourism, I think this is a good first step in our strategic plan to develop that plan for tourism. But I think I need to hear more so that we can maybe build this in. I don't know that Main Street houses tourism or not, but I think it's a key.
It's certainly gonna be part of it, yeah, it's part of the promotions, part of it.
As our mayor always says, and I totally agree with him, downtown is the experience, out there is the business. Downtown, there's businesses here, but it's the experience. We don't know what our other tourist attractions and what's gonna happen with that. So right now, downtown Main Street's where it's at.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, and it's really, I mean, it and the chamber will become one.
Right.
And it's just really going to give a boost to what was the chamber then too. I mean, as far as just the resources and taking what we learn and getting it to apply it to all the businesses in town. It doesn't have to just be applied to downtown. And the participation out on the highways traditionally been high too in Main Street, and so I'm really excited. I think we've got a good thing going here.
So as we move into the next session, next month or whenever we have it, be thinking more about that. You'll know more, we'll know more, but how tourism can fit into that program and how it can support what we want to do. I kind of keep that one. There's just a lot we don't know right now with some of the other things going on. The other thing we have is establish a task force to evaluate incentives and attract developers for residential and commercial growth. This is broader than Main Street, but I also feel that Main Street with the chamber, if it does decide to go that direction, being sort of a foundation for then bringing in the other pieces to form that task force.
Right.
That's just me. I don't know if anybody else has any other thoughts on that.
That's a
I
good
almost
thought.
think you have to have a task force separate
Yeah.
than Main Street, because I don't think Main Street is going to.
That's what I was asking.
They're going to focus on downtown mainly, from what I've heard on all the meetings. I mean, that's their main focus. And if we're going to evaluate incentives and attract developers, I mean, that's on our outer edge to grow our community that way.
Well, I don't see why they wouldn't be a part of it, though. The thing I don't want to see once again is that we're going to start making different groups that don't communicate and get along, because we have a good track record of doing that in this town. But I see it as a broader task force where they have a seat at the table. Maybe they aren't doing all of these things, but your chamber director would be servicing all of that. So if that's...
I know, but I'm just saying, I don't think you're going to be able to put that task force under the Main Street umbrella.
No, I meant they're the foundation, that we finally are taking two things, and if that does happen, merging them, that'd be the first time we've done that. And to me, it's just a foundation, because there is commercial and business down here too.
I think we'll know more once we see what, to your point about data, I'm not sure they have, residential data growth, initiatives that they would share if it's focused on a downtown. I mean, things might just be outside their purview. We won't know that until we see what the programming, what kind of help they're bringing, but I do see it potentially being a separate, separate goal that's probably not going to be addressed potentially by a Main Street combination.
They'll certainly be involved. I think the people on those committees would certainly be involved in that. But I was envisioning more of just a separate, actual, focused only on that one thing kind of entity. And they would be involved.
I assume
for
it
sure.
would invite that chamber director in, and maybe that person doesn't wear the Main
Yeah,
Street
that's.
hat.
I think that's where.
But I was like volunteer for the year for both EDC and chamber, and I know how it works when it doesn't work and when groups don't talk with each other as much.
Sure.
So I just want to make sure that if that person is at both, then that person will wear their chamber hat and be a part of that.
Oh yeah, I'd certainly expect.
But also
them to
have
be
that
part of it.
Main Street it's part of it though.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying, and to evaluate that, it takes something different than what Main Street is. I'm just liking the synergy of what
Yeah.
you're telling me with
Yeah.
that program.
No, that's a good thought.
So really, with those two things, I don't know if there's more that we need to talk about until next time. If you want to bring in your ideas for that task force that's broader and who might be included or how that might look. But still, I need to know more about some of the other things that are happening, like Main Street, or what the chamber is going to decide to do. I don't know. Have they made a commitment to, if this is accepted, that they would merge?
It certainly sounds like it's going that direction.
Every indication.
Yeah, I'll give you a little bit more details about it. So the chamber right now is a 501c6 nonprofit, and what's being allowed now, I guess it didn't used to be allowed on Main Street, was to consolidate them both as one 501c3 and have the donations aspect of it too. So, and I think I maybe mentioned that the last time. So that's really that's enticing for them. They see extra funding and just a kickstart to the chamber and making that organization more useful.
So I have three things for our next work session: to review the vision statement like we did, and to understand the toolbox of incentives, what we already know. So I'll be leaning on Glenn and Ed, and we might invite Ed to attend if we have space. I know he has a lot of information on stuff that we've done, like the NRP. We've done a lot with the Kansas, is it Housing Corporation? Housing?
Yes, where their
Yes,
grandson,
with the-
yeah.
So just maybe printing up something that we can look at to see what we've done, what we're currently doing, when things run out, what's available, and who does those kinds of things. The other thing is to define a direction for creating this task force. So bring in your ideas, what we had just talked about, and we'll try to piece that together and create a goal for that. Is there anything else we need to cover that you could think of? Anything left unsaid? Okay.
I will say that we will know by mid-February if
Okay.
we've made the next
So if
cut.
it's-
So that should be right in time for around this.
Yep.
And you might have some more direction from the chamber right then too.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
Nice work, Ryan. Herding the cats. You did real well, herding the cats.
It'll be $7,000.
Send the bill over to Glenn.
Lynn, do we need to put this back?
Yeah.